So this book is called How to Be Good by Nick Hornby, and I guess this makes the third book in a row for me right now on everyday family relationships, etc. This particular story begins when the main character, Kate, or Katie, tells her husband that she wants to get divorced. Like, on the surface of things, they seem to have a really, really normal family. Like, they have 2 kids. Katie is a doctor and makes enough to have them living very comfortably, upper middle class. And her husband, even though he doesn't really have like a super stable job, is a fairly well-known and popular columnist. Like, he writes a column called like The Angriest Man in Holloway. But like, if you take a really close look at their lives, they are deeply and very obviously unhappy. So I think it's a really good picture of how like 2 people who, like Katie makes the complaint that, people find him really funny as like the angriest man there, but like, his anger and the fact that he is genuinely like angry all the time and critical all the time has kind of just worn her down. Like, she doesn't feel like he actually cares about her anymore. And she makes the comment at one point that they've both become kind of like masters of what she considers marital warfare. Like, they know each other really well, and at this point in their marriage often do things really, I guess, just to spite the other person. Like, I think that might be one reason Katie went and got an affair, although I guess it may... I don't know, it's all a little bit confusing. Like, this is a bit of a hard book to summarize. Like, it begins with her request for the divorce, which doesn't really have the kind of impact that she wants, but... And also, like, she's trying to figure out whether or not she genuinely wants to get divorced, or whether, like, she just wants something in her life to change, but she doesn't really know what that is. And then she's also struggling with, technically, her husband doesn't treat her badly necessarily. Like, he's not abusive. He doesn't do any of the things that people, think a husband that you want to divorce ought to do, I suppose. So like, her wanting to get a divorce seems wrong somehow. Like, you're not being a very good wife, and like, there's the kids to think about, but she's not even sure sometimes that she really likes her kids either, and that also seems kind of wrong as a mother. But anyways, it leads to this whole string of really weird events where she makes the comment at one point that what she really wants is everything in her life to remain structurally the same, but for her husband David to not be David anymore. So this is turns out to be somewhat prophetic, I guess, of a statement, because one ongoing thread that happens in the story is that one of the things David does in order to spite her is that when he gets a back injury, he goes and seeks out this completely unqualified person who says they can heal his back in like 10 minutes. Someone with no qualifications, who isn't a doctor, not someone his wife would actually recommend since she is a doctor, and goes see them and pays them like a whole bunch of money. But it turns out that this person actually has, I guess, what I would consider magical powers. Like, he really can just take away injuries, I guess. But, things happen, and suddenly David comes back after, learning about her affair and being very angry, and becomes an entirely different person. Like, all of a sudden, he comes back and he isn't angry anymore, and he completely changes his behavior. Like, he's not mad, he's not critical, he doesn't write his column anymore because he doesn't have the anger to fuel, like, the kind of criticisms and critiques that he was using in his column in the first place. And he sets out to do all these, I guess, what people would typically consider like good works, for instance, giving out the food that they have at home, making his children donate like some of their toys to the less fortunate, giving away one of the computers in their house to the shelter for women nearby, and then like, going so far even as to start like a program to try to help house the homeless, like with different families that have like extra rooms on their street. Like, they're all actions that I guess one would typically in society associate with being a very good person. And now this makes Katie's situation even more complicated because it seems even more wrong that she is still really unhappy. And there's it's a bit of hard to summarize. As I said, it's a bit of a messy story where it basically just goes into like all the things that happen like as these events unfold. Like it's a bit chaotic and really goes into like a lot of the contradictions, I guess, and hypocrisies that people have like in this struggle or like desire to be good versus the desire to be seen as good by society at large. So, like, it definitely was the kind of story that gave me a lot to think about. Like, I think it seems a little crazy at first glance. Things like what her husband goes and does, like with the, say the housing the homeless program. Like basically he recruits like this group of homeless teens and just asks people to volunteer, like if they have an extra room in their house, to just have the person move in with them. And she's extremely skeptical since obviously like there's a high risk that whoever it is might, for instance, just steal all your stuff and run away, or possibly commit like worse crimes or something, since it's not really a safe thing to just invite perfect strangers into your home like that. But he is, after his about face, he treats everyone like they must be really good people, and he's like wants to give them the benefit of the doubt all the time. And so the end result is that some people really do steal stuff and run away, whereas there are also a few kids who, like, where the match seems like it's going to turn out really well for them, and it really might make the kind of difference that will help them get back on track. I think, it's something to think about because, like I said, like at first glance, it seems like a little nuts, but like if you think a little bit more about it, like it also has some good points. Like he says that, yeah, like people complain all the time about, say, the government not doing enough to help the homeless, and then they don't actually take any actions themselves. Like they're not willing to make any sacrifices of their own. Like they seem to think that just by complaining about the government or something, that demonstrates them being a good person and they can be smug about their moral superiority. But, like what actually makes that difference, like what actually makes someone good, I guess, is when you actually try to take steps to yourself to make that difference instead of just complaining and thinking that that is somehow enough. And like I think the way he goes about it often goes way overboard and stuff, but it's still, it's food for thought on like where exactly you can strike that balance, like what exactly it really does mean to be good, or like how people can make that difference. Something I did not like. So I found the narrative style a little bit rambling sometimes. Like it kind of reminds me of like stream of consciousness writing, though not quite that bad. Like it doesn't have that kind of complete randomness, I guess, but a lot of it does kind of rant a little bit, I guess, and wander off topic a little bit, so that it wasn't always it didn't always have the strongest draw factor, especially since it doesn't technically have a really strong backbone plot.